Hello there. Time to do modifications and a review for this new building. Now, if you watched my previous video, you already know that this antique bookstore and townhouse is an alt build of the Sanctum Sanctorum set designed by rebelnili. You can find the instructions from rebrickable.com. I'll put the link down to the description. Now, as soon as the build was complete, I already knew that I wanted to make a couple of simple modifications for this build. For example, there is a black downspout pipe in front of the building that I actually didn't show during the build video. It is only connected at the top, but I thought it would be ideal to add a connection point to the ground as well. So I added that jumper in, as well as 3 additional ones for the minifigures. And this street light was originally connected with only 2 studs, but it was easy to add a couple of more studs there for a more secure connection. All of these modifications could be done from the extra parts of this alt build. For the minifix, I chose Dr. Strange without his cloak, Wong, Mordo without his cape, and the evil Doctor Strange with a hairpiece from the zombie Doctor Strange just to make him look a bit more different. I also decided to add this Spider-Man figure in, just as an Easter egg. So here you can see the minifigures added in, and also the downspout is now connected at both ends. So here we have a couple of guys just saying hello to each other, one guy reading a book in front of the bookstore, and yet another guy is here on the roof. He obviously came through that door. And Spider-Man is partly hidden behind that chimney. I think that adding the minifigures in instantly makes this set look more lively. Next, I thought about doing another kind of a modification for this building. While the human helpers were putting this set together, I noticed that there weren't any Technic connector pinholes in this build. Personally, I don't use pins to connect my buildings to each other. My layout is pretty small and it is supported by walls from 2 directions, so buildings will stay aligned without those pins just fine. But yet, all my buildings do have holes for those pins. Therefore, I decided to test if it would be easy to add those connector pinholes to the walls of this building too. Now the actual 2 white Technic bricks should not be a problem. I do recall seeing some of those placed elsewhere in this build. Next, I decided to check the building dimensions. The longer side wall should not be a problem, but I started to wonder if the antique bookstore part was wide enough to include those Technic bricks in their correct positions. Luckily, that building part was just wide enough to include those in. And I could even find a perfect brown 2 white brick to replace next to the facade. The other end would not be that easy. I would have to shift these 2 by bricks by 1 stud so that they would end up inside that wall. And then of course I would need to take 1 2 white brick out of that wall. And here you can see those 2 by bricks shifted by 1 stud. Now I need a dark bluish gray Technic brick, and there is one right here in the back wall. And now that Technic brick has been added next to those 2 by bricks. And this masonry brick will replace that missing Technic brick here in the wall. And then the back wall was put back together. Really, this modification was just about moving 4 individual pieces slightly. And now I had one of those pinholes in the correct position. Next, it was time to replace this brown brick. There was a suitable replacement brick used in this furniture piece. I thought that this could easily be just a regular brick here, so I could swap those 2 parts. And now the second brick was in. Now the only thing needed to do was put the wall back together. And then this side was all complete. Then it was time to move on to the second wall. That one was just a basic brick-built wall, but the stairs were partially built inside it for additional support, so that would create more requirements for the placement of the bricks. Now the wall already had one Technic brick in it, so I could just move that to the correct position. And there was another one available here at this chimney, so I could just replace it with a nougat brick from this wall. Now I tried to keep the wall sections as intact as possible, but I quickly realized that this is not going to be helpful. I need to rebuild the wall entirely. Now it actually took me 3 attempts to get that wall built correctly. On first attempt, I was left with 4 gaps of 2 white bricks and 1 extra 8 white brick. So, not an ideal solution. The second attempt was a bit better, and finally I got it done on the third time. And this was the end result. Now the exact positioning of each of these bricks has changed quite a lot, but the end result is still quite the same. And now I had all 4 connector pinholes positioned correctly. So if you really want that each one of your buildings has those connector pinholes, I would say that this alt build is fairly easy to modify to include those. I also did a couple of minor modifications to the interiors, but we can go through those while we are doing the review. How about right now? Now I think that the most eye-catching feature of this building is this grey section at the center of the facade. And those 2 white pillars on either side are actually slot-mounted tiles. And the slope pieces form this interesting architectural shape at the top. And that makes this building look quite a bit different from the original Sanctum Sanctorum. Interestingly, even though this set uses all these sand green slopes from the original, you really can't see most of them when you look this building directly from the front. And that helps to create an illusion of a different color palette, even though the pieces are the same. And speaking about the same pieces, here you can see the original doors used. But then again, the architecture around those doors is quite different when compared to the original set. Now the smaller section of this building, the bookstore part, actually uses some of the colors quite interestingly. Neither this reddish brown color in the first floor or this tan color in the second floor are exterior colors in the original set. So once again, this manages to create an illusion of a different color palette. With all those tricks, we have quite different looking front facade for this building. And this front facade shows little signs of any parts constraint issues. The same can be said about this side wall too, although there are some color variations here, but those variations in a way make sense. There are no random colors here. If you are willing to use some extra parts, perhaps those dark gray parts could be swapped out. As we move on to the backside, you can see more and more parts constraint issues, but I still think that this is quite interesting and good looking build. Here, rounded 1x2s are used to create some interesting looking brickwork around the windows. But then again, this long Technic brick is not ideal, and if I would replace one part from this build, this would be it. Other than that, only thing that bothers me are some of these extra snot bricks, but perhaps those can be counted as detail. Here you can see some added water detail. I'm not sure if this is supposed to represent a leakage or a working pipe. And here you can see that these leaf elements try to hide some of those extra snot bricks. And I think that helps a bit. And on this final short wall, the parts constraint issues become very obvious. Because there weren't enough bricks to build walls, these are actually bookcases built partly into the walls. These do look good on the inside, but not on the outside. Of course, if you place this next to another building, you are not going to see those. Next, it is time to check the interior. One of the most interesting features here is this corner fireplace. There are some fire elements in it, but it's pretty hard to see from this angle. At the back, we can see a green sofa and many paintings and artifacts. And I also think that the stairs to the second floor are quite good looking here. The floor tiling is copied from the original set. Same can be said about the main door build, and I never liked that one in the original set, so it's not my favorite here either. On the other side, we can see the bookshop part with a counter and couple of bookcases. This section is quite tightly packed with details, but then again, I think it is fitting. Now, once you enter the second floor, you need to walk around the stairwell, and then you arrive to this small kitchenette. The fridge is slightly modified from the original build, but the rest of the kitchenette is completely new. Next to it, we can see yet another bookcase, couple of armchairs, and a desk. On the other side, we can see more shelves and artifacts. There are lots of these in the original Sanctum Sanctorum set, so it makes sense that there are lots of artifacts here too. In addition to those, you can find a green armchair, grandfather clock, and the stairs to the third floor. And in there, we can find a bedroom with this bed built out of snot bricks and tiles. I also did some modifications for the other details of this room. I moved that trunk to a slightly different position, and I added those golden pedestals for those artifacts. I think that transparent blue cube was supposed to be an aquarium in the original build, but I think that now it's just an artifact in my build. There really isn't any room for other details in this room, but there is an art piece on top of the bed and another on this wall panel, putting the stickered pieces of the original build to good use. And of course, you have seen this already. There is a door out of that bedroom to this roof section. And of course, that third floor also needs a roof panel, and it looks like this. Basically, there is just a chimney and some other minor details. Those stickered pieces will be covered when this roof section is on its proper place. And here is one final look of the entire building once again, now that all the floors are put back together. Now, overall, I could say that I am quite impressed of this outbuild. The design makes it look quite distinctive from the original Sanctum Sanctorum. And there is some quite clever parse usage here that helps to create an illusion of a somewhat different color palette when compared to the original. Sure, there are some parts constraint issues with the back wall and especially on the side wall of the antique bookstore part. I also think that there are a bit too many bookshelves and artifacts and armchairs in the interior details, but then again, you're dealing with the parts of the Sanctum Sanctorum, so that is what you're going to get. At least there were some new details, like the kitchen stove and the bed, to really help sell this as a home, instead of being a Marvel superhero set. So, overall, I would still recommend this set. But of course, one crucial test for any custom modular building is how it's going to look when it's placed next to some other modular buildings. So, let's take a look at that next. Here you can see this set placed between the police station and the jazz club. Now the jazz club side seems to align pretty well. The police station side also looks quite good from the front, but if we peek around this corner, we can see the parts constraint issues with that side wall. Other than that, this combination looks quite good. Here the police station and the jazz club are reversed, and once again there are no issues on this side. It looks really good. Now the pizzeria will hide this problematic side wall of the antique bookstore a bit better, but it doesn't cover it entirely. Other than that, even this combination looks quite good. Now this is how the buildings from the bookshop set would align if I hadn't moved those on a different spot on their base plates. Same as before, this side matches quite nicely, but there is a slight issue with the slope of that roof section of the bookshop. On the other side, I think that this townhouse from the bookshop set aligns just about perfectly with the antique bookstore. I think that it really helps here that the townhouse is not as tall as many other modular buildings. Here the bookshop buildings are reversed, and this seems to work relatively well also. Here we have a shorter section between two taller sections. And on the other side, the roof designs seem to match quite nicely. I really don't think that it is an issue that this townhouse is a bit further back than the other building. Here I have tested the assembly square set, and I think that it is quite a bit too tall to fit nicely on this side, even though the depth would seem to match nicely. And even though assembly square is a bit taller when placed on this side too, I don't really see an issue here. The buildings seem to line just nicely. So, just about any building that I tested fitted nicely on the taller side of this set. But there were some issues with the shorter side of this set. Some of the buildings just looked too tall when placed next to that, and other buildings did not hide that messy side wall entirely. But there were some good fits too. If I had to pick a favorite, it would be this. I would place the townhouse on the shorter side of this building, because that was pretty much the only building that matched perfectly with it. And I would choose the police station on this side. Mainly because I think that the altering heights of the buildings creates a nice mismatched look for this street. Of course, I just did the tests with the official modular buildings that I had available. There might be some other buildings that are even better fits with this one. But hopefully that gave you some ideas how this building would look next to some other buildings. And that might be helpful if you need to decide if this building is for you. Of course, I still plan to modify this building even more in the future. I am planning to modify this into a corner building that goes next to my assembly square. But not yet in the next video. I have recently acquired the Lego Transformers Soundwave set, and next time we will build and review that. If you want to get a notification as soon as that video is up, you should consider hitting that subscribe button down there. I will upload the next video ASAP, but when a Sloth says that, it means as slowly as possible. Bye bye!